her ears. And then it was over. Chapter 1. 29 years later. The harsh blare of a car horn pulled Alex Kincaid from sleep, an uncomfortable ache burning in her lower back. Shifting position, she felt the rough edge of a chair. She must have fallen asleep in the den. It had been years since she'd done that, awakened with an empty bowl of popcorn in her lap and an old rerun of Taxi on TV. Her mind meandered through the evening before, but she didn't recall if she'd been reading or watching television before bed. She settled back in to sleep a few more minutes. A car rushed by, and she shifted again, wondering when her street had become so noisy. Usually no more than one car passed every 20 minutes. But this morning it sounded like there was a parade going by. No wonder she never slept in the den. No, that wasn't right. The den was in the back of the house. The cars couldn't be heard from there. Forcing her eyes open, she stared out her windshield. Her windshield? Confused, she looked at the car around her. Sitting upright, she clutched the steering wheel. What the hell was going on? Above her, the yellow leaves of the fall oak trees sheltered the morning sun, creating patterns of light across her dash. A cover of dew beaded across her windows. The cool California morning made her shiver. A row of Victorian and Tudor homes stared down at her from the hillside like thick-necked soldiers preparing for attack. What was she doing in her car? She glanced down at the familiar navy sweatpants and gray Cal t-shirt, trying to remember going to bed the night before. She'd taken something one of a handful of doctors had given her to help her sleep, Restoril. The endless insomnia had finally driven her to be so exhausted, so totally beat that she'd regressed to trying the meds again. She'd slept. She'd actually slept. But when had she gotten up? And left her house and driven to... She looked around at the houses. Big houses, larger than anything in her neighborhood. All built high off the street, their large windowed fronts staring down at her questioningly. And where the hell was she? Leaning forward, she ran her hand over her lopsided ponytail and looked around. There has to be a good explanation for this. Her eyes closed, she rubbed at the pain in her temples. Someone must have called her. Her brain kicked into gear as she tried to picture her phone, tried to remember it ringing. Her mind sputtered and stalled like a dying car. She didn't remember talking to anyone. Hoping one of the houses would nudge into her memory, she stared back at the imposing facades. The block didn't look remotely familiar. Cars raced down the street, their drivers dressed in ties and suits. Work. Her fingers searched her wrist for her watch. It wasn't there. But she always wore her watch. Turning the key in the ignition, she glanced at the clock on the dashboard. It was nearly 7 a.m. Damn it, she was going to be late for work. She started the car and glanced at a street sign, Yolo Avenue. She'd never heard of that street. She'd been sleepwalking. That had to be it. She'd never done that before. It had been so long since she'd even slept through the night. And this was worse than sleepwalking. She had sleep-dressed, then sleep-driven, and who knew what else. Fighting off the battling anger at not remembering, she steered the car down Yolo until she saw a familiar street sign, Henry. She was in Berkeley, actually only a half-dozen blocks from the station. Yolo was on her beat, but she had never come across it before. Ingrained in her subconscious somewhere was this street. That was why she'd ended up there. She shook her head and sped across Shattuck to Ashby. That was the last time she was going to take sleeping pills. Wishing she had a siren, she blared her horn at the slowpoke drivers around her and sped for home. She parked the car in front of the small home on Pine Lane that had once belonged to her mother. The front grass needed cutting. The hedges had grown up and begun to block the front windows, giving them the appearance of shaded limousine windows, only in green. The Spanish